Okay, my friends, today what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at equations, but what I wanted to do to start off is I wanted to specify the difference between equation and a numerical expression, because I think that those are two things that people get a little confused about sometimes, and so I want to just make sure we're on the same page and that you guys understand what the difference between the two are. Okay, so I'm gonna pull an example of like from our own language that we speak. Okay, so in English class we know that we have two kinds of ways of writing something or expressing a thought, right? So we have one way we can express a thought is we can express one by writing a sentence. Okay, and we can also just express how we feel by writing a phrase. Okay, and so one of the main differences between the sentence and the phrase is that the sentence has some kind of punctuation, like the period, or it has a exclamation point or a question mark, and a phrase is just a quick thought, right? In our math language, we also have something similar to that. So our sentence version in our math language would be the equation, and the way we know it's an equation is that it has an equal sign. Okay, so that's how we can distinguish between an equation and an expression, because an expression does not have an equal sign. Okay, so I'm going to make a little bullet point here so you guys can take some notes on this. Okay, so a phrase has equation is a sentence, and we know it's an equation because it has an equal sign. Okay, our numerical expressions are kind of phrases or quick thoughts, and it does not have an equal sign. Okay. And that's the main difference between those two. So for an example of an equation might look like this. Okay, and because we have that equal sign there, we know it's going to be an equation. And the shorthand for equation that I like to use is EQN sometimes, just so that I don't have to write it out, the whole thing. Okay, and an example of a phrase is the stuff that we looked at yesterday when we were learning about the order of operations, where we had things that look like this. Okay, no equal sign there. Okay, so that's the main difference between what an equation and an expression may have. Okay, but like I said, one of the things that I really wanted to focus on is I wanted to focus on equations today. And so I want to break down what an equation really is even more. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at that example that I just wrote up there. And let's look at that. 3x minus 2 equals 4. Okay, so I'm about okay, and so some things to note about an equation is that there's always going to be that equal sign like we mentioned, and that equal sign acts as kind of like the separation point. And when I say separation, it means that whenever we have an equation, there's two sides to it. Okay, um, one side is going to be whatever's on the left side of the equation, and the other side is going to be what's ever on the right side. Okay, so there's always two sides to an equation. It's always separated by whatever's there on the equal sign, and so that's common terminology that you might hear from learning math and learning algebra and solving equations is moving something to one side or moving something to the other side, just so you know that the two sides are divided by the equal sign. So a question that you guys might be given today is asking you to solve an equation if x is 1, 2, or 3. Okay, and so how this is going to work is the book will give you these little squiggly lines or these little brackets, okay? And what they'll do is they'll put some numbers in there, and it's similar to what we had talked about the situation about evaluating. And so what you're going to do is they're going to give you a equation to work on, and what I would like you to do is I would like you to make this chart. I'm sorry if it's a little crooked. And it's always going to be set up like this, okay? And so you'll have an x. What you're going to fill in the second column here is whatever the equation is. So in this case, in number 1, the equation is 5x minus 1 equals 9. And then the third column is going to say t or f, and the t is for true, the f is for false. So the third column is going to be a true or false column, okay? And so in this x column, what you're going to do is, excuse me, look at whatever they gave you in the brackets here and just fill it in. So the first number I have in the bracket is 1, so I'm going to fill in a 1 here. Second number I have is a 2. Third number I have is a 3. Okay. Next thing you're going to do is in the second column, it's basically telling you wherever you see an x, plug in the corresponding number, I guess, in the row that you have here. So in this first row, my x is 1, so wherever I see an x in the second column, I'm going to replace it with 1. And there we go. So if I was to solve this out, I'm going to bring this over here to the side here. Bring this over here to the side and work this out. 5 times 1 is 5, minus 1 equals 9. We're going to add this 1 over. Or we're not going to have to add this 1 over, I'm sorry. 5 minus 1, if we simplify that out, is going to end up being 4. And does 4 equal 9? No, it does not equal 9. So, is the statement true or false? Yep, it's false. So I write false in there, okay? And I'm just going to repeat here, same thing. So I'm moving down to the 2 now, and wherever I see an x, I'm going to be plugging in 2, because I have a 2 right here. So if I go over to the side and work this out, I end up here with 10 minus 1 is 9. Does that equal 9? It sure does. I'm going to put a check mark right there. And so in this column, it's going to end up being true. Okay? So why don't you guys work on this last one, and let's see what you get. So hopefully you get false, okay? So this is what your final answer would look like. Just this whole chart right here. And you're going to ask me, do I have to draw the chart? Yes, I want you to draw the chart, okay? So at least for right now, I want you guys to draw the chart unless you hear otherwise. So the chart is mandatory that you make. Just go over to the side and do some side work to solve out each of the equations. So here's our second example, and I decided to change it up and use the y variable instead of x. So they could use any letter they want. It may not always be x, so just be prepared. But I just wanted to make a change and change this to y. Another change that you might see is instead of the word is, I've replaced it with this E looking symbol, and that's what the book uses to prompt you in answering some of the problems and answering the questions. And so I just wanted to introduce it to you, but I'm going to change the color here just so that you know that I'm adding a little something here to help you understand. So this E symbol, it just substituted the word is, so just remember it means is. Okay. In our math world, it has a more detailed vocabulary meaning. So, but for your purpose right now, just know that this little E that the book uses is also just a fancy way of them saying that it means is. Okay, so we're just going to solve it the exact same way we did in example 1. And they gave us some new, some new numbers in the brackets here. They gave us 0, 1, and 2. And so here's our problem. Remember that, yes, I do want you to draw this chart out. I know it's such a pain and you could do it quicker, some of you, without using the chart, but I want you to do it. Just trust me. It will serve a purpose. You just don't know what it is yet, but it will serve a purpose. Okay? So there are my 2 columns. I don't know why I wrote out this true or false, but that's okay. Feeling energetic. So remember, in this Y column, all I'm doing is I'm looking what's inside my squiggly line brackets here. I have a 0, I have a 1, and I have a 2. In the second column, it's just saying that I have to fill in the blank. It's the fill in the blank column, fill in the variable column. Okay. So in this row, my key player is the number 0, and it's telling me everywhere you see a Y, plug in a 0. So I see a Y right here. I'm going to plug in 0. I see a Y again. I'm going to plug in 0. And there we go. So I'm going to go over to the side here and do my scratch work. So I have 0. Inside the parentheses, according to my operations, I go 4 minus 0. 0 times 4 is 0. So does that equal 3? No way. So it's false. Okay. Now we're going over here to this new row. This new row is dedicated to the number 1. Everywhere I see a Y, I'm going to plug in a 1. So there's a Y right there. Going over to the side here, let's start over. Okay, so I have 1. 4 minus 1 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. And this one definitely works out, so it's true. And then go ahead and you guys work on number 2, and let's see how you guys do. So you should have ended up with 4 does not equal 3. Okay, so this one is definitely false. Remember, my final answer is just this chart right here. And I'll be looking for the chart. And that's it. Here's the last problem I'm going to give you guys for tonight to work on. And so what I've given you here is I've switched back to X for the variable. I'm using our little E. Remember, that just means is. And I've switched up the numbers that are inside here. Okay, so I've set up the chart for you. Here's my 3 columns. I'm going to let you guys finish up the problem.